Counterintuitively, most of our suffering doesn't come from adversity. It comes from how we respond to adversity. Hi, I'm Bill Groner, and welcome to The Connection Effect, where we explore the science and soul of connection to ourselves and to the people around us. Today's episode is about the hidden superpower we all have to control how we respond to adversity. Because when life doesn't go the way we hope, our reactions often matter more than the event itself. I'm joined by Fred Luskin, founder of the Stanford Forgiveness Project and one of the world's leading researchers on forgiveness. But today's conversation isn't about forgiving others. It's about forgiving ourselves for the ways we react to adversity and reclaiming our power and agency to control our own well-being. About learning how attention, gratitude, and emotional regulation help us stop giving our past or other people power over our inner lives. This is about letting go, about responsibility without blame, and about practicing the conditions that actually lead to happiness. Here's my conversation with Fred Luskin. Hi, Fred.
Hello there. Nice to see you.
Oh, it is so nice to see you. My gosh.
You know, Bill, I think it's a really important question you're asking about how to take this positive psych, helping people stuff, and actually make it available to people. I don't think that question has been answered.
Fred, what I love about your work is the practicality, but before we get into that practicality, I want to start with the premise. Your work in forgiveness and what I've listened to and read about seems like more like a theory of happiness. Can you start us at the beginning in terms of your forgiveness work and a potential theory here?
I mean, Bill, it relates to what I just said to you, which is I had a desire to teach forgiveness, but I realized that no one would listen if I didn't talk about it from other directions. So very few people cared whether they forgave. A lot of people wanted to be happier, and a good number of people wanted to be healthier. So I took what I considered to be a really important concept and titrated it so that people would hear it.
When you were first bringing in forgiveness into the world of psychology and you started the Stanford Forgiveness Project, what was your underlying premise?
Well, I began this because I couldn't forgive. So the genesis of this is my own misery. I mean, I was an idiot. That's hindsight, but I was a whiny baby who just made my wife's life more difficult because I had been really badly hurt and responded like any good 8-year-old would. So it was rescuing myself that was the genesis for the Stanford Forgiveness Project.
So was it introspection about what you were going through that gave rise to your work in forgiveness?
I was betrayed decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the skills for handling it, so I became bitter and I became mistrustful. I didn't contain that to just the person that harmed me. It became a life stance. And that life stance, impacted everyone in my world. My wife came to me one day and said, "Fred, I really love you. I just don't like you as much. Grow up," basically. So that forced me to look at, what was I doing? At that time, I could have been a licensed therapist, but the world of therapy pretty much ignores forgiveness because it's a threat to their business model. It doesn't endlessly discuss what happened. It teaches you to let it go after an appropriate time. I had endlessly discussed what happened. I needed to learn how to let it go. My figuring it out for myself, which was, once I made up my mind that I had to do it, then the methods became not so difficult. The motivation was the major driver. But when that was solid in my mind, I knew that I was going to try to do something useful when I did my doctoral dissertation.
So let me just get some context. I'm assuming you were hurt by another person?
Even though I may not have described him as that, yeah.
And the letting go. Describe what you mean by failing to let go.
I kept on playing the injury over and over in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a failure to let go. I blamed him for my life circumstances. That's a failure to let go. I demeaned him in my own mind and words. That's a failure to let go. Those are what are present in most people who keep a grudge going. What I learned to do, mostly through trial and error, was switch that around, to recognize that I'm the one responsible for my mind and heart now, to calm my own nervous system down, and to think in a way where I don't give so much power just because people do things either I don't like or hurt me. So I changed the narrative that I told myself. Those all together contribute to letting go. I'm not so limited and attached to what happened to me. I'm not looking back there so much. I'm looking ahead, and I feel more efficacy in terms of managing my own woundedness.
So I'm taking notes only because when I've listened to you, you're incredibly profound. Your work is simple yet incredibly complex at the same time. And you just mentioned agency or power, you mentioned nervous system, and you mentioned narrative. Let's take one of these at a time. Let's talk about power and agency, because here you have an external stimulus that's causing you pain. You want to let it go. Talk to us a little bit about that agency or the power that we all have within.
I mean, when we started to teach, one of the simple statements that we oriented it around is stop giving your past or other people the power to ruin your day. So that's it in a nutshell. Like right now, today, this week, I can hold on desperately to the fact that my mom wasn't very good, or I can open the window and see the sunshine. That's my choice. If I don't do that and I continue to argue or lament or blame about what happened 15 or 30 years ago, then I'm handing my power away to influence my life, to be happy, and even to control who runs around in my head. Power is the essential element of how people grasp this. I'm giving away my power.
Now, I know you're doing this or talking about this, and you conceived of it in the forgiveness context, but it feels like your body of work goes much beyond when somebody does something bad to you, and it seems to extend to just adversity generally.
Of course. I mean, the ways that human beings rescue themselves from misery are pretty well established. It's not the yogis, the Buddhists, they figured this stuff out thousands of years ago. We're just putting it in different terms. And just like in most other things, human beings like to divide up things into their own little areas. But what you're saying is true, that when bad things happen, or painful things happen, or things that demand growth happen, we often have a period of adjustment. So you can call that resilience, you know what I mean? You can call that flexibility. The specific forgiveness piece is to stop blaming something for my unhappiness and to let go of feelings of revenge and to stop demeaning what it is, whoever or whatever it was. So you're now free to experience your current life in as positive a way as you can.
So here's where the simplicity, the rubber meets the road with the complexity. Sounds great, right? We have adversity. There's something bad that happens in society, something bad that happened to you. The question is, where are you paying your attention? Are you paying your attention to the negative? You're paying your attention to the positives, something different. That feels like the work of a lifetime.
Let me add one piece.
Mhm.
That forgiveness is not the first response to adversity. Grieving is. So when we are mistreated or hurt or abandoned or lied to or beaten or don't get a job or somebody, drives their car into our whatever, our nervous system, our perceptual systems are both in a state of shock, a state of denial, and a state of resistance. Like, how do you take all that in? The process of taking it in, adapting to it, and moving forward is grieving. That, wow, I'm more vulnerable than I thought I was. That's part of grieving. I can't stop the world from harming me. That's part of grieving. People do things I don't like. That's part of grieving. Shit happens is part of grieving, and some degree of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages come into play then. We're going to deny the severity or the depth of it. We're going to make deals with the universe. If my father survives, then I'll go to church every day, or I'll stop eating ding-dongs. We get angry. We get upset and sad. And then all of those things settle in a healthy grief response to adversity. When they don't settle, we end up with a grievance. So when you work through your stuff, your brother didn't do something right and you get mad at him, and then you feel sad that you don't have the family you wanted, and then you think, I can't believe I have this asshole for a brother. You're in denial. And then you say, boy, if he had only done this, I would have done that. And you're bargaining and all this stuff. And then after a while, that settles. Those parts of you play a necessary role in allowing the nervous system and brain to process the injury and no longer need to be staring at the injury to go back to life. That's what grief is. But it gets stuck. And some people get stuck in anger, and some people get stuck in denial, and some people get stuck in self-pity and victimhood. And those are the ones who have a grudge or grievance. They haven't resolved their grief. Those are the ones who need forgiveness.
So those sound like, is it the right terminology to say negative cognitive self-loops?
Yeah. I mean, that's a simplification, but that's important. The only thing that we did, honestly, was take this idea of the resolution of grief, which Elizabeth Kubler-Ross referred to as acceptance, and deepen and extend that to forgiveness. And then I used, because I'm a psychologist who was working in behavioral medicine, I used the practices of behavioral medicine to facilitate forgiveness. I have people meditate for a moment and calm down. That's very useful. If you're angry at something that happened 4 years ago, chill.
You mentioned earlier the nervous system. Is this where that meditation technique can come in to sort of just bring you down?
Well, cognitive strategies work on the nervous system also.
Such as?
You've done this before. You'll cope again. Remember, you're not alone. People care about you. It's really not life and death. Or distraction works a little bit sometimes, If you're obsessing about the fact that your partner left you, go take a run. Go knit. It's like do something. But the endless perseveration, links, the neurons that fire together, wire together.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be careful not to tell the same story 4,000 times so it becomes an unbreakable habit. You have to be careful not to allow a conditioned response from the arousal of your nervous system to your partner's abandonment, because then every time you think of their abandonment, you have a stress response. So you have to work with your nervous system to deal with the arousal that comes when you remember an unresolved wound or hurt. I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And you've talked about some of the strategies being meditation or maybe a cognitive reframing. What other strategies come to mind?
The strategy that I looked at, because it worked for me, was gratitude and positive emotion. That the simplest thing to help people forgive. And this is where you're absolutely right. This would apply to everything. And I wish there was more of an audience for this. We, because of the negativity bias, we exaggerate the painful things that happen to us and minimize the positive things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a existential weakness. So I realized, and this is before anybody had talked about the negativity bias, I realized that the people who came in to see me were misperceiving reality. They were seeing the bad that happened to them and ignoring the good. So I realized that unforgiveness was in part a dishonest take on life. During the period of grieving, it may be necessary because your nervous system is overwhelmed with change or loss or pain or vulnerability. Moving forward, though, that tunnel vision makes it impossible to see your own life clearly. I now believe, we lie about things. We exaggerate the bad and minimize the good.
Mm-hmm.
One of the 2 or 3 transformative events that led me to forgiveness, besides my wife hitting me with a proverbial 2x4 with, grow up, idiot. I expected something better when I married you. She really said that. I mean, that was not subtle at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a very crabby time in my life because of what happened. I had a job I didn't like, and I walked around grouchy. So one day I came back to our apartment. This was decades ago. And my wife meets me and says, "You need to go to Safeway. I need a handful of items. I'm here with our kid. I can't go. Go to Safeway." Me being the crabby, obnoxious person I was, said, "Safeway's too far. I want to go to Albertsons." This was just the state of mind that I had.
Mm-hmm.
She looks at me and says, "The one thing I need is not at Albertsons, it's at Safeway." Okay. So she pushes me out the door. I get in the car. I go to Safeway. It's near Christmas time. Safeway is ridiculously crowded. I park like a mile away. I'm walking with steam coming out of my ears about poor me. I have to go all the way to Safeway to buy this. I go into Safeway. I get to the aisle where what she wants I have to get, and it's not there. My pity party hit overdrive. Literally, I'm like full of self-pity. And all of a sudden, literally, a moment of grace descends. And something shifts in me. And I stop dead in my self-pity shoes. And I look around and I see I'm in Safeway. And I'm beyond abundant. I can buy literally anything I want. I'm still a sarcastic New Yorker. I say to myself, yeah, you can get anything you want, but the one thing your wife wants. But I notice staggering abundance. Staggering. Here's a store with 200,000 items, and Home Depot is down the block, and I have a car, and I have a partner, and I have a baby. And the whole game changed. Literally, the whole game changed.
You're talking about gratitude and appreciation, right? But the game changed where you looked and said, I need to stop looking at the negative and start looking at what I have instead of what I don't have.
That came later. The game changed was my recognition that my attention was the largest contributor to my unhappiness.
Right.
I then walked out of Safeway and I noticed the people spraying the produce. And I noticed all of the produce. And I realized that if I walked in and noticed the produce and all the people who sprayed the produce, I wouldn't be so unhappy. And if I noticed my wife doing what she did, I wouldn't be so unhappy. And if I noticed that I had a daughter, I wouldn't be so unhappy. The game changed, like the playing field changed. Then I realized, after a little reflection, wow, Fred, you're the primary reason why you're still so upset about what this person did, because you didn't stop and smell the coffee. So you kept on talking and thinking about your life as a victim rather than somebody who was co-creating misery. And so all of a sudden, the forgiveness stuff started to emerge as telling a more accurate picture of one's life, which meant that, yes, I had been betrayed and I had a good marriage and I have a loving child and I had food on the table. And once I started telling the truth, the grievance had much less hold on me.
And telling the truth to yourself is what you're talking about.
But Bill,
yeah,
the heart opens.
The
heart literally opens, and it opens to a whole different form of intelligence.
So tell me the natural growth of that thought. So now you're looking at, I can now focus on what I have. I have the power to focus, and I'm going to choose a positive instead of a negative. Tell me how that developed.
I'm going to see both.
Okay. Yep.
Not overvalue the negative.
Overvalue the negative. So there's something I know you've heard of, the Lozado ratio, which is that ratio that they say in positive psychology of 3 thoughts to 1. Positive to negative is sort of that healthy balance. I don't know if that's been scientifically proven, if it's anecdotal, but what are your thoughts about that?
I can tell you that it makes a difference, but I can tell you more, that what I came to see was when I walked into a room of angry people, and anger and victimhood are the 2 pits that unresolved grievance can lead to. Or me, and I don't like you. But when I walked into a room of people who were in poor me or I don't like you, and I started to say something like, well, let's go back to this morning. And I want you to all remember when you opened your eyes, how many of you woke up with a roof over your head? And they'd raise their hands. And how many of you woke up with food in the refrigerator? And they'd raise their hand. And how many of you woke up with running water? They'd raise their hand. And how many of you gave thanks for that? And nobody raised their hand. I said, what would happen if right now you just pictured waking up in the morning and opening to just how unbelievably abundant you are in a world where 1 billion or more people have no food? If when you woke up, and you can picture it right this moment, wow, I am one lucky SOB. That not just lowers your stress, but it opens to the more positive chemicals and ways of being, maybe more vagal tone. I mean, I don't know exactly. But I said, from this space of thank you, forgiveness starts to make a little sense. From the space of scarcity, which is nobody loves me, the world's not fair, people don't do right, from the sense of scarcity, forgiveness feels really ridiculous. But from the space of thank you, who you are can now contemplate forgiveness. That was the insight and the central mechanism that allowed me to develop a whole training on how to forgive.
Let's just stay in this gratitude aspect, which is an appreciation. And I think what you're saying is there's a couple of things going on. One is gratitude in the moment and an appreciation is good in and of itself, but it also makes you a better person to engage with and deal with adversity.
Absolutely, because your identity shifts and the story you tell about your life becomes more truthful. The third insight that I had about forgiveness, it's simply a change in story.
From what to what?
From victim to hero is probably the most simplistic. Bill, that third insight took me 15 years. I had all these complicated things about what forgiveness is and isn't. When I got that forgiveness is a change in story from arguing with not getting what you want to making peace with your life, the whole thing fell into place.
Now, you're saying forgiveness, and you're the leading researcher in the world. You travel the world teaching. You've taught tens of thousands, but this feels like it applies beyond what we would think about forgiveness. It feels like it just applies to adversity to begin with.
Well, but what is adversity? It's difficult experiences where many times we get stuck in coping with those difficult experiences, and then we hold on to the negativity to explain why our life isn't good enough. Forgiveness is unraveling that holding on. It doesn't change the adversity, but it releases the vice grip we have on experiences that we feel weren't right, that we continue to make front and center and don't open back up to our life. That's what unforgiveness is. So forgiveness releases that. And now we've had adversity. It used to limit us, and now it doesn't limit us so more. That's the forgiveness story.
So it's not just somebody doing something to you. It could be the universe doing something to you. I'm unhappy with climate. I'm unhappy with our current political situation. I'm unhappy at work.
Yeah, that's called existential forgiveness.
So how are you using the word forgiveness in those contexts, just so I can fully understand and the audience can?
Forgiveness is resolving the upset that you created around life. Otherwise, it's just life. It's just unfolding. It's, the Hindus have the Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, the creating, the preserving, the destroying, all these waves of things of change and newness and oldness. We object to some of it, in particular when it hurts us or people we care for. That objection is really helpful short term. You have to know what things are wrong. You have to make decisions. Long term, that objection or argument makes us unhappy and unskillful in life.
So are you suggesting that if we could somehow be much better at realizing the power that we have of our attention and having gratitude and regulating your nervous system, that those pieces, just those three, and maybe there are more, can help us navigate regularly and maybe minimize the negativity bias?
I do believe that, but I will I will clarify the third and fourth. The first one is where we put our attention, mindfulness.
Mhm.
The second is gratitude and positive emotion. The third is we do need some minor training in cognitive disputation, which
Okay.
is simply the world doesn't have to give me what I want when I want it. We have lots of cognitive distortions, and we need to be able to unravel some of those. So the biggest cognitive distortion that I had with my friend, he shouldn't treat me that way. I had that thought over and over and over and over in my head. I have no control over how he treats me. Shouldn't is an endless argument. This is not telling you anything new, but there's a piece in there for dimming the cognitive argument with what is. The fourth piece is we can easily learn over time to tell ourselves different stories about adversity. So I'll give you a simple example. You said about climate change, right?
Mhm. Great.
It's very helpful to notice that human beings do not love their environment and create climate problems. Then maybe it's useful to be depressed about it for 6 months. And then being depressed about it does you no good. It may be useful to be angry about it for 6 months, but then after 6 months being angry about it does you no good because one, anger helps you make bad decisions. Two, anger helps you create enemies, which makes it much harder to negotiate with people. And three, anger is a sign of unhappiness.
Mhm.
So there's a period where you look at adversity and you react to it, and then you need to make that reaction more skillful. And forgiveness is what we call that piece that goes from, let's say, depression or anger to some degree of acceptance so you can do your work to try to make an effect on climate change.
So that's wonderfully utilitarian. It's a cost-benefit analysis of what you're putting yourself through and how much longer you're going to put yourself through it. Cognitive dissonance or disputation, have you seen that work? Can you share with us how you've seen that work? I assume you have.
It is the most single effective form of psychotherapy. It's the simple idea that an extended argument, this is maybe a Buddhist thought, an extended argument with reality always wins.
Yeah. Okay, so bring us through the climate. I'm looking at something that happens. I believe it's because of the climate. I'm reading about it. I'm anxious. I go through that process. Bring us through what you would recommend, how we help ourselves not be so impacted by the negative.
Well, it's really helpful to read about things that need help and change.
Mhm.
So you want to welcome information and you want to welcome analysis. Information and analysis often lead to there's something really not right here.
Mhm.
And then our level of emotional competence comes into play about how we deal with things that aren't right. Some people who are highly emotionally competent, they go out there and do good things in the world, and they who knows, they set up foundations, they give money, they march, they talk to people in ways that convince other people that this is a problem. People with weak emotional competence, they may go crazy and they may yell at everybody and they may make enemies out of everybody, or they may sit in a corner and suck their thumb. The analysis can be the same. We have a problem. We have to do something about it. It's the individual's emotional competence that determines how skillful they are.
But what about those that don't have the resources or the bandwidth to do something about it? Now you're sitting and looking at what you think is a problem in society. You've educated yourself to see what some of the resolutions are, but you don't practically have the time or the bandwidth or the resources to do anything. And you're sitting, are you going to continue? How do you stop that negative cognitive loop of, oh my gosh, I can't do anything and it's a problem?
Then I could give you a simple forgiveness-based answer. You forgive yourself for being able to do the best you can. But the one other thing I'll add, and as you see, I'm a simplifier and I try to make things obvious and available to anybody. There was a wonderful thing that Dr. Phil did with his audiences that was like just genius. He would ask all these people who came into his world, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
And that might be the single greatest psychotherapeutic intervention that's been invented. Okay, you don't like climate change and you're doing X. How's that working for you? Is it improving climate change? Is it making you happier? If it is, go for it. If it's not improving climate change and it's not making you happier, try something else. That's the heart of forgiveness. If bitterness, hopelessness, rage are not helping, try something else. We know now what doesn't work. That's the experiment, the individual human experiment that most people don't do. Let me give you a more prosaic example. You have an ongoing disagreement with your partner, with your spouse, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend. Most of the time, we just get into repetitive arguments.
Huh?
And often, we'll say the same thing 74 times and then get mad at them because they don't change. The question of how's that working for you could cut it down the 74 to 10. And then you haven't created as desperate a grudge against your partner.
Yeah.
You just say, oh, okay, I don't like what they're doing, but the way I'm dealing with it ain't making it better.
Incredibly simple. And you're right. I'm thinking about all my repetitive negative interactions that I have in the world and my attempts to sort of resolve them. And if I had that realization of like, that's not working, so maybe just let that go. And maybe it is what it is and let it be. I love that, by the way. Let's stay on what works. Positive psychology does suffer from not having enough interventions that actually change behavior for the positive. You've just mentioned one, and I love it, which is cognitive thought of how's that working for you? And maybe you should just let it go. Let's go back to gratitude for a second, because certainly there's robust science on gratitude and gratitude journals. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience or understanding of the effectiveness of that?
Of gratitude?
Yeah, gratitude and gratitude practices.
So I'll do one with you if you want.
Yeah.
Before that, one of the practices we gave groups was, okay, divide up into a twosome and tell the other person something that sucks in your life. Don't pick nuclear war, don't pick the worst thing that ever happened. But tell them that, your dog shits on your carpet or your partner doesn't take out the garbage, something, right? But that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're done bitching, just make sure to tell them about something you're grateful for.
Okay.
You will not create the same negative loop by simply adding at the end of your statement, and at a minimum, I'm very grateful that you sat here and listened to me. Thank you.
Mm.
That worked in a way that shocked people.
Wow. Should we do one?
Well, I'm going to show you one that we picked up later.
Okay.
About how to help resolve a grievance against somebody. So if I'm going to do a guided imagery with you, okay, for maybe a minute and a half, all right?
Oh, yeah, sure. To those at home, I invite you to do this exercise along with me.
So just close your eyes for a moment. And just allow your attention to go inward a little and quiet down and just quiet a bit. And bring your attention inward and gentle your breathing. I mean, just the simplest reminder. Gentle your breathing. And when you breathe in, just make sure your abdomen expands. When you open to receive the air, and when you breathe out, contract a little. And then this is a very simple thing. Just ask yourself, over the last day and a half max, who's been kind to you? Just go through the tape of your life of the last day, 36 hours. Slow that tape down a little and just look for, where was kindness? Did anybody say anything nice to me? Did anybody offer me help? Did anybody do my laundry? Did anybody help me? Did anybody listen to me complain? I want you to just notice where kindness was. And I want you to pick one instance of kindness. Focus on it. And from your own heart, say thank you. From the center of your being, from your heart, say thank you very much. I thank you. I send you thanks. Thank you. From your heart. And then let that go. That's a very simple gratitude intervention. And then you remind people, well, how often do you say thank you? And how often do you talk about the people who are kind to you? You can spend 2 months talking about somebody who wasn't kind to you, but do you give the kind people 5 minutes? And then I might say, and that has more to do with your unhappiness than the fact that somebody lied to you a year ago. Did that make that clear?
Yeah, I'd like to share. At least share a couple of thoughts. Number one, I'd like to share what it was, that moment of kindness, just because I want to give it a little bit more life. We went out to dinner with another couple last night. It's the second time I've been with them. And, we're getting to know each other. And I sat next to the guy of the couple. It was a male-female couple. And as I sat down, we were sitting next to each other at dinner. He moved his chair, the angle of it, just 3 inches towards me. Literally changed the chair so he's angled slightly more to me. I was like, whoa, he's telling me I matter. That's kind, it's polite, that's showing I'm about to enjoy you, I want to engage with you. But here's what I love about your exercise. I thought about it cognitively for a millisecond and have not since. And now that you're making me go through the exercise, that wants to be a bigger energy. That wants to be more a part of me as I go through today and say, there's kindness in the world in the simplest of movements. So, wow. Thank you.
And Bill, the world is full of those moments.
So what I'm interested about is we have these interventions that can work. The cognitive reframing, the focus on the positive, letting go, this gratitude. I know there's gratitude journals, but this kindness exercise. We could spend hours talking about how we now all incorporate that in our lives, but let me start the conversation. Should we do these things and practice them prophylactically in advance or responsibly?
The really healthy, forgiving people have it ready to offer. When somebody screws up their order in a restaurant, they've already known that they're not going to jump all over them. When somebody cuts them off in the freeway, they've got the mindset that, life happens. I make mistakes. I'm going to extend that. When your partner makes a mistake and it's not critical and you've practiced gratitude, you're much more likely to let that mistake go and recognize the shared humanity.
Okay, now I can't let this go. Is this daily breathing, daily meditation, daily gratitude journals, daily cognitive resets, daily focusing on what could be adverse and saying when that happens, I'm going to let it go? I mean, there's a lot here.
But it's the central issue. And maybe this is why I'm different than most positive psychologists. The daily issue is, where do you put your attention and what do you practice? Those have to be trained. Those are daily things. It's like, if I look at all day long how people are not treating me right, I'm going to be really ripe to create a grudge.
Mm-hmm.
If I spend 20% of my day just noticing how good the world is to me, it's going to take a lot more to trigger my grievance, but I'm going to be less captured by it over time because I have better practices.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one more thing of where this all came from. The Dalai Lama, in his book, The Art of Happiness, the thing that most stood out for me about that book was, if you want to be happy, practice the conditions that lead to happiness. If you want to be unhappy, practice the conditions that lead to unhappiness. Complaining, bitterness, grudge holding, those are all conditions that lead to unhappiness. So the core of what I try to offer the world is what you pay attention to and what you practice.
Do you have any resources that you could direct our listeners to who want to go to the next stage and look at these practices that are positive practices?
Do I have a list of them?
I don't know. I want one web page where everything is there.
But I did just publish a few months ago the Forgive for Good Workbook for Recovery. It has practices, prompts, meditations on every single page. It is soup to nuts on how to do all of this. I realized that I needed to write all that down before I was done.
Yeah. Well, you're not nearly done, are you?
Who knows? I still feel fine, but,
Fred, your work on forgiveness, which to me is much more expansive than people would think. It's not just that one person who did that one thing. It's a way of life. It's a way of accepting yourself. It's a way of accepting the universe and the cards that it deals to us, and gives us a refocus on the positives and gives us the practices to find well-being in a very difficult, crazy world. I thank you so much for this podcast, so much for your work, and I look forward to continuing with you.
Thank you, Bill. It was actually nice just to have the time to have an hour conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Wow, that was grounding. And what I'm going to take with me into my daily life from this conversation with Fred is a renewed sense of control over my own life, of agency. What stayed with me most was the idea that so much of our suffering comes not from what happens, but from where we place our attention afterward. Especially the reminder that we don't have to keep giving our past or other people power over our inner lives. As you move through your own life, following this conversation, I invite you to sit with two questions. First, on a daily basis, when we are faced with an onslaught of obstacles and noise, can we place more attention on the abundance of positives that the universe provides to us? Second, on a more macro level, what are we each holding on to that's no longer helping us? And what might change if we practice simply letting it go? Because connection isn't about something we solve just once. It's something we practice again and again in small human moments of attention, choice, and care. If you'd like to reflect alongside others or share how this episode landed for you, you can join us at connection.net/Substack. That's where the conversation continues between episodes. Thanks for listening, for your curiosity, and for being part of this community. I'm Bill Groner, and this is The Connection Effect.